All right, so are we ready for this? A deep dive into premises liability.
Sounds kind of serious, but yeah, I'm ready to dive in.
I think it's going to be fast. So we're going to unpack all of this. It's going to be like, what, a crash course
Yeah.
in what property owners are responsible for in California.
And for like everyone else too, right? I mean, what we all need to know to stay safe and like legally in the clear.
Exactly. Exactly. Like what you need to know to stay safe and legally savvy.
Yeah.
So we'll debunk some myths.
Oh, I love myth busting. Always fun.
Yeah. Maybe uncover some surprises along the way. So you ready to get into it?
Absolutely. Let's do this. Hit me with it.
Okay. So California, it's different, right? It's not like other states. Like a property owner's liability, it isn't about like strict rules and categories.
It's more about reasonable care.
Right. Reasonable care. So no hard and fast rules, just reasonable care. But what does that even like actually mean?
Well, in California, like the heart of it all, it boils down to this legal thing called Civil Code Section 1714A.
Catchy.
Yeah, not really, but basically what it says is like you're responsible for injuries, right, that happen on your property.
Okay.
If those injuries were caused because you weren't being reasonably careful.
Okay, so let's say, just for an example, like I'm a homeowner. Does this mean I'm on the hook for like literally everything that happens on my property? Like even if it's like totally, completely a freak accident?
Not necessarily, no. The big thing here, the key is foreseeability.
Foreseeability.
Yeah, so if like a reasonable person, right, could have seen that something bad might happen and you as the homeowner didn't do anything to prevent it, then that's where this liability thing comes in.
Gotcha. So it's not like about guaranteeing that no one's ever going to get hurt.
No.
It's more about just taking reasonable precautions.
To prevent foreseeable harm. Yeah, exactly.
Okay. I think I'm starting to get it. So it's all about, being aware, like really looking around, spotting those hazards, taking steps. But how do you even, like, I guess, determine what's foreseeable? I mean, is there like a formula or?
Well, let's think about it this way. Imagine, right, you've got this homeowner. They know their dog, has a little bit of a biting problem, a history there.
Okay, yeah.
But they leave the gate wide open. Someone comes over, a visitor gets bitten. That's a foreseeable risk, right? They knew about the dog, didn't really do anything to stop it from happening. But let's say, same homeowner, guest over, out of the blue, a meteor crashes through the roof.
Ouch.
Hurts the guest. Now, that's not something you can really, plan for.
Can't put that on a checklist.
Right. It's not foreseeable, you see.
Okay. No, that makes sense. You can't anticipate a meteor.
No, you can't.
All right. I think I'm getting this foreseeability thing. So it's about, being aware of, like you said, those potential dangers.
Being reasonable.
Taking steps to prevent those risks, those foreseeable ones.
Yeah.
Okay. What about all the legal terms? Like I always hear about invitee, licensee, trespasser. Do these labels even still matter in California?
That's a great question. And it brings us to this turning point in California law, right? Way back in 1968, there was this huge case, Roland v. Christian.
Okay.
It kind of changed everything. The court basically said, hey, let's not get all caught up in these strict little categories. Yeah. Let's focus on, did the property owner act reasonably, under the circumstances?
So California decided to move away from those strict, you're this, so this rule applies kind of categories.
Exactly.
But does that mean they're totally irrelevant now? It doesn't matter if someone's a guest or a trespasser?
Not entirely. While those old categories, they aren't the deciding factor anymore, they still, they give us some context.
Okay.
Think about it. It's just generally more foreseeable that a guest you invited over might get hurt, right, than some random trespasser.
Well, just because they're there?
Exactly. You're more likely to, be aware they're there and take steps to keep them safe.
That makes sense. So even though California moved away from those strict categories, the, specific situation, it still matters.
Context is key.
Context is key, yeah. Okay. Speaking of context, what about, that concept of, attractive nuisances? If I have a pool, am I automatically liable if, some kid wanders onto my property and,
Yeah, that's a super common misconception. Thankfully, not how it works here in California.
Okay.
Attractive nuisance doctrine, it's kind of a thing of the past.
Right.
Same general negligence standard applies. Doesn't matter if it's a kid or an adult.
So, no special rules for kids. Just reasonable care for everyone. But doesn't that seem, I don't know, a little unfair? I mean, kids, they don't always make the, most rationalist decisions, right?
True. But it's not a free pass for homeowners to just, ignore dangers to children. You still have to be reasonable. Think about what a kid might do. The pool example, right? Fence, locked gate. That's just common sense.
Makes sense. So even though, like, the law doesn't call it out specifically as, like, attractive nuisance, homeowners, they still got to take those precautions.
Especially when it comes to kids.
Yeah, especially for the little ones.
Being proactive, considering those foreseeable risks, that's what matters.
It makes you think, doesn't it?
It really does.
All this stuff makes me look around my house a little differently now.
Me too, me too.
I bet our listeners are, like, doing the same thing right now, thinking about all the potential hazards.
Hopefully. Better safe than sorry, right? It makes you realize that it's not just like legal stuff. It's about like creating a safe environment for everybody.
Yeah, for sure. It's like we're all in this together. Homeowners, visitors, everybody. But let's get practical for a minute. So say I'm a homeowner in California. What are some things I can actually do to, like, protect myself and, like, other people from these potential premises liability issues?
Okay, so that's a question I get all the time. It's
Yeah.
a good one. And I think it boils down to three main things: regular inspections, proactive maintenance, and clear communication.
Okay, so break it down for me. What do you mean by regular inspections?
Think of it as like a checkup for your property. Just walk around. Look for potential hazards. Like, is that porch railing still a little wobbly?
Uh-huh.
Any cracks in the sidewalk where someone could trip? Are the steps lit up properly?
Okay.
It's all about spotting those problems before they turn into accidents.
So don't wait for something to actually happen, before you take care of it.
Exactly.
Got it. What about maintenance? How does that play into all of this?
Maintenance is all about fixing those issues that you find during those inspections. Like, if you find that wobbly railing, don't just put it on your to-do list and forget about it.
Yeah.
Take care of it right away. The longer you wait, the more likely someone's going to get hurt.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Fix it before it becomes a problem.
Exactly.
Okay. And communication, how does that fit in?
This is especially important for warning people about hazards. Even temporary ones. So let's say you're having some construction work done and there's like a patch of uneven ground.
Right.
Put up some signs, let people know. Or if there's a slippery surface, throw down a mat. It's about making sure people are aware of the potential dangers.
So it's not just about fixing the problem. It's about letting people know about it too.
Precisely. It all comes back to that reasonable care.
Okay. So inspections, maintenance, and communication.
Got it.
Got it. Those are some great takeaways for homeowners. But what about for people visiting? Like, what can they do?
That's a good point. It's not just on the homeowner. Visitors also have a responsibility to be careful and pay attention to their surroundings.
So it's a two-way street.
Exactly. Everyone's got to do their part to prevent accidents.
Okay. So we've talked about reasonable care, foreseeability, inspections, communication. Anything else that's, like, really important for people to understand about this whole premises liability thing?
One thing that people often get confused about is this concept of assumption of risk.
Okay.
So let's say you invite a friend over to help you trim some tree branches. That's kind of risky, right? Climbing ladders, sharp tools.
Yeah, for sure.
If your friend falls and gets hurt, you might not be held liable because they kind of assumed that risk by agreeing to help you.
So even if someone gets hurt in your property, it doesn't automatically mean you're in trouble.
Right. But it's important to remember that assumption of risk, it's a complicated legal thing.
Yeah.
Lots of factors involved. Always best to talk to a lawyer if you have specific questions.
Good point. And speaking of legal advice, I think it's important to remind everyone that we're not lawyers here.
Definitely not giving legal advice.
This is just for informational purposes.
Yeah, this is just to give you a basic understanding. But it's not a substitute for real legal advice.
Right. If you have specific concerns, talk to a lawyer who can help you with your particular situation.
Exactly.
Okay. So we've covered a lot. Reasonable care, foreseeability, inspections, communication, assumption of risk. What's the main takeaway here? What do you want people to remember?
The most important thing is that premises liability in California. It's about being reasonable, whether you're a property owner or a visitor. It's about thinking ahead, anticipating what could go wrong, and taking steps to prevent it.
Creating a safe environment.
Exactly.
I like it. Well, that wraps up part 2 of our deep dive into premises liability in California. When we come back, we'll wrap up this conversation with some final thoughts and maybe a little something to think about. Stay tuned. Welcome back. So we've been talking all about premises liability in California. And, it's really got me thinking about, like, the bigger picture.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? Like how this all connects to, this kind of trend we see.
What do you mean?
Well, it seems like lawsuits are becoming more and more common these days, and premises liability is definitely part of that.
It's true. It does feel like everyone's suing everyone now? Is it just me? Or is there like something bigger happening here?
I think it's a few things, honestly. Some people think it's easier to file lawsuits now.
Okay.
Others say it's because people are more aware of their rights these days, and they want to hold others accountable.
That makes sense.
Whatever the reason, premises liability is something we all need to think about.
Yeah, for sure. So let's bring it back to our listeners. Like, what does this all mean for them in their daily lives?
I think it comes down to creating a culture of shared responsibility. Property owners have to do their part to prevent harm. And visitors need to be aware of their surroundings and be careful.
It's that two-way street we were talking about earlier.
Exactly. It takes everyone working together to make things safer.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So before we wrap up, is there like one last thing you want our listeners to take away from this?
I think the most important thing to remember is next time you're out and about, just take a second to look around. Be aware of your surroundings.
Yeah, like at a friend's house or even just walking down the street.
Exactly. Look for those potential hazards, and think, could something be done to prevent an accident here?
It's like that saying, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure.
Exactly.
Yeah.
A little bit of awareness can go a long way. And of course, this deep dive, it's just a starting point.
Right.
If you have specific questions, always talk to a lawyer.
Great advice. So, to all our listeners out there, stay safe and stay informed. And we'll catch you next time for another deep dive into, well, who knows what. Until then, keep those thinking caps on and stay curious.